Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this is something you're interested in, then why not subscribe? Again with one of my new set reviews. I kind of like doing those. It lets me talk about the game a little bit and also lets me give my opinion, which I love to do about Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I don't have anyone to talk to about it. And I wanted to wait a little bit with this pack because I wanted to see the meta impact of Labyrinth. And after I've run into them a few times in the ranked ladder, and I've run into them a lot during the event. My opinion hopefully will stay unbiased, but yeah, they have caused me a bit of a grief during the festival. It is what it is. Let's start off with the Cursed Necrophilia. Stuff that's not really new, stuff that has been around for at least a little bit. That is somewhat interesting, but not necessarily that good. You can probably, with its effect, build some kind of floodgatey fiend control deck. I had a look at it, but the cards are just a bit too expensive for the fact of trying to make it on a budget, and then the deck isn't good enough to actually be played in general, so you don't really want to be crafting all of these cards. So Cursed Necrophilia, not a card you really want to be getting out of this pack. Let's be honest, this pack is mainly interesting for the people that want to build Labyrinth, and I'll be getting to that obviously in a second. This card, I understand why it's an ultra rare, but it is not a very strong card. It's not a bad card by any means, but to be able to special summon by its own effect, you need to target 3 of your banished fiend monsters. So that it doesn't really work that much unless you already have a deck that banishes fiend monsters anyway. Yeah, quite difficult, but the effect can be decent if you get into a certain loop that will come up with certain other cards. Now we talk about the real stuff. This is lovely Labyrinth of the Silver Castle, a card that isn't as good anymore as the other new card, but it's still a decent one-off in a deck. So if you open the pack and you get one of it, that's still fine. And since you want to be opening this pack, spoiler alert, you definitely do want to open this pack if you want to get Labyrinth, because this deck pack which basically includes everything that you need for Labyrinth. Well, the standard stuff at least. You still need some good trap cards as well in addition to it, but this card as a one-off is definitely nice, and you can still play it because the effect is still very decent. This is the card that you want multiple of, 2 or 3, depends on what you're playing it. As if you want to be playing the budget version, 1 is still fine because it's very searchable in the deck, but still I think you want to be running multiple of it, because one thing that I realized during the festival is the whole while you control a set card, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, and it cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. It's very strong because you can't really get rid of it by battle that much, because the back row stops you from being able to do lots of things. Its own effect also, whenever a normal trap card is activated, you can, like, well, not whenever, once per turn, but you can set another one then, which is also very annoying, because then you still have that set card and you can chain this, and if this is chain link too, then it still can't be destroyed by a card effect that your opponent activates beforehand. So very, very stressful, this whole getting rid of this card in the first place, and it keeps regaining your resources, and with 3000 attack, it's not a bad monster to have on your side of the field as well. Plus it's easily special summoned, it's easily searched. Overall, very, very amazing cards. And yeah, you do want to be playing a few of this, so definitely should open this pack then to try and gain as many of that as possible. Now we have more of these ultra rares. That this is honestly what drags this pack down by a lot, that there's the whole Spirit Destiny board, some messages in here that you really don't want to be playing, and this card as an ultra rare, ugh, I could have seen it as a super rare, like I could have, because it can be quite stally. It is like a whole game plan. It's a bit like the Golden Castle of Stromberg, but different for different usages. But it's not a card that you want to be picking up at all. I don't think there's many people that play Destiny board. If you are, I'm very, very sorry. I've not seen anyone play this deck like ever. It sounds funny, I guess, but for the fact that it's just funny, it is a lot. Like, it's very expensive, and it's way too expensive for the fact that it isn't that good. We have Dark Spirit's Mastery, another card that theoretically you can be playing in other Fiend decks, but usually isn't played all that much. It is still a decent card. It's not terrible, but also as an ultra rare, not sure that needed to be the case. You usually want to be playing 3 of it if you play it, so if you open this pack, yeah, you'd have to open it quite a lot. The good thing is, if you are interested in the Spirit and in the Destiny board stuff, then you will get a very competent deck on the side with the Labyrinth cards that you get from this pack. So there's that. If you're interested in this, it will be a very, very, very good pack for you to open, because the deck that you get alongside it is very nice. If it's the other way around, sorry folks, that's what drags this pack down for you a little bit. We have the ultra rare that matters, Welcome Labyrinth, a card that You still want to be playing at 2 or 3 if I'm not mistaken, but you don't. It's not the best one anymore, but it's still like very decent. I don't know, I feel like they both have the ups and downs, a little bit more ups than downs, but yeah, this card can set itself again, and very, very nice. Then we have the big welcome Labyrinth, the card that can be better because you have more removal with it, so that's a bit nicher, but also you cannot trigger certain effects if you don't have a fiend monster already on board. So this special summons other cards and has different usages, but the fact that it has a removal built in that you can use from the graveyard makes this card, like, for me, a tiny bit better than the other welcome Labyrinth card, but it's still a very, very, very good card, both of them, so you want to be picking up as many as possible. So crafting slightly becomes difficult if you have already counted how many ultra rares you need. Then we go on to the super rares, Absolute King back Jack, a card that used to be played at 3 if I'm not mistaken, Labyrinth. Now, depending on what cards you play in the deck, if you play like the Ghastly Glitch, you could still play like 1 or 2 of this. Other than that, I don't think it's like a must inclusion anymore. You can still play it, but it kind of has lost value for the deck, at least a tiny bit. We have now the other support cards I was talking about earlier, the ones that kind of can create like a certain loop with the Necrofear card. It's the Dark Spirits. They're not necessarily effect-wise all that great. This one already, if your opponent's monster attacks at the start of the damage step, oof, you can set this card from your hand or field to the graveyards, and then you can special summon the Dark Necrofear, if basically any level 8 monster, but its effects are negated, so usually most of them don't matter. But the Dark Necrofear has an effect that triggers during the end phase in the graveyard, so it doesn't matter when it's destroyed. So it doesn't matter that the effect is negated, and that's what this whole plays off of. And if you do change the attack target to it and perform damage calculation, I know what it's supposed to do, but for the fact of like running this card as a super rare in the deck just to get this card out from the graveyard that has to hit the graveyard beforehand, doesn't seem all that great. And then you have the recursion effect that this card can get back to your hand if a level 8 fiend monster is sent to your graveyard while this card is in your graveyard. So you can recycle this and keep doing the loop then. Don't really think this needed to be a super rare. I understand why it is, because they treat this whole thing as an archetype, but I don't really think it's that good. Would have been nice if it then like did something else at least. Potentially, like, I don't know, destroy opponent's card when they attack. I think that would make it a tiny bit too good potentially, but something, because this is, yeah, I don't really know if you want to clog your deck with it, but it is playable, I say. Dark Spirit of Malice, kind of the same thing. When your opponent activates a card of effect, you can send this card from your hand to the field, target one level 8 fiend monster in graveyard, special summon it, but its effects are negated. Yet again, if you go for the Cursed Necrofear, doesn't really matter too much. And then if a level 8 fiend monster is sent to your graveyard while this card is in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. The problem with these cards is that you need already quite a bit of setup before, so these can be completely useless in your hand. And then all they do is special summon Necrofear, which, if it's destroyed, can then get rid of certain stuff on your opponent's board, depending on what other face-up spell and trap cards you have. So it's not like, it's not awful, but I don't know how easily you can get into the setup, and I don't necessarily think they had to be super rares. They would have potentially seen some play in some fun casual decks if they weren't. Like this puts a hefty price tag on a deck that isn't that great to begin with, but could have been casually played at least. So I don't really like when they make well, below average cards a bit more expensive than they had to be, because that takes all the playability away from them. Yeah, very annoying. Now we get into the, well, I want to say better ones, but Ariane isn't one of the ones that is played all that much. I don't think the effect is bad per se, but you lose out on, well, you gain and lose advantage. So you don't plus, you stay at like 0 with this one, because you send one trap card away, and then you get one fiend monster if your opponent doesn't have any disruption for it, because you get rid of the trap cards before the semicolon as cost. So can be problematic from time to time. It can help you go into different other fiend plays, because this special summons one level 4 or lower fiend monster from your deck, so you can play this card potentially in certain other fiend decks that want to be playing a control trap cardy playstyle. So this can be quite nice, but in Labyrinth decks this isn't a staple whatsoever. We have Ariana. This is the one that you want to be playing. This one can keep searching your things and can also plus you, which has is quite a nice effect, and you can set spell traps, you can draw one card. Very, very nice card, because that's starts your plays and you can keep recycling it. Plus 2100 defense isn't actually too bad, So there is that. This is the one you want to be picking 2 or 3 up of, mostly 3, but you can get away with 2 in certain situations. The field spell 1 or 2 should be fine, but this card also very searchable, and it's if your opponent doesn't get rid of it, it can do so much for you. But they also have to get rid of your back row, so unless they Harpy's Feather Dust you or whatever, then it's very difficult to decide what back row or what spell trap should we get rid of, since there's not all that much spell trap removal in the meta or in general in the game that is decent or blowouty. So we will have certain problems with this. This card can be very, very strong and very, very hard to deal with. We have now Destiny Born here for some reason. I mean, I understand the reason for it, but definitely didn't need to be a super rare. We all know what Destiny Born does. It's not a good win condition. Who would have thought? It's not a good card at all. Yeah, don't play this unless you really want to. I mean, it can be funny if you get it off, but very hard to do so. And now the worst super rare in here, Labyrinth, Barrage. You do not need this card in any Labyrinth deck, and this card should not have been a super rare whatsoever. Then it might have seen some form of play if it wasn't, potentially, in some casual fun decks again, because the effect is somewhat interesting, but yeah, it even has the whole clause that stops you from using this card as like a copy spell in burn decks, so there's that. It is okay for certain variants potentially, but not really for Labyrinth at all. And we have Archfiend's Ghastly Glitch, the card that I was talking about earlier, which can be helpful playing King Backjack, because then you can get the effect off a bit easier. Because usually there's, I mean, you can send Fiends to the graveyard even in the Labyrinth deck, but it's not as good as certain other cards where it makes a lot more sense. But yeah, this is a decent, I don't want to say budget card, but it's a decent card you can be playing in Labyrinth, but usually you play different cards, different trap cards that just are better for the meta and better in general. So yeah, this one playable, but not necessarily the best trap out there in the first place. I think that's it. We are back to all the Fiends. We have lots of Fiend stuff in here. We have more things in here that can do stuff. We have Salamander Catalyzer in here, one of the cards that I like very much as a budget player, because this card's cheap and can help you with certain decks. We have a card in here that could be nice, but was just a tiny bit far away from it, certain effects. And we have the discard ones in here as well, plus the Spirit Messages if you care about them. And the rest, Sayuja's Shackles are in here for some reason as well, so there's always this. We have some old school cards in here, Doom Caliber Knight and Sangan. Not that you can craft these anyway, but they are in here, so keep an eye out for that as well. Well, how would I rate the pack? I would say, well, you get a very, very competent deck with this one if you get the Labyrinth cards, but you need quite a few of them. You need quite a few of the trap cards, and some of the ultra rares sprinkled in here aren't that good because they're part of the whole Necrofear Spirit Message kind of thing. And also, since you only get 4 cards out of 8 that are actually themed of this pack, because that's how the secret pack works, you will be opening this quite a bit to get a good playable version of Labyrinth that isn't budget. Like if you want to go for a more competitive build, that will take you quite a bit, and you will pick up quite a lot of useless cards along the way, but you don't have much of a different choice. Yes, there's the new pack that you can get as well, and if you already have some of the Labyrinth stuff, then maybe you're fine if you just get the new pack that came out, not the secret pack, but the other pack that exists, and then craft the other ones. That's potentially okay, because with that one you'll at least get like Dark World stuff, Generator stuff, Trap Trick stuff, and with this one you get, well, not so good stuff. So I'll rate this pack at like a 5 or a 6 out of 10, because Labyrinth, very, very strong, but quite expensive to get, and the rest that you get is absolutely useless. So that drags it down by quite a bit. Very annoying indeed, but it is what it is. That concludes this video. I hope you had a nice time. Give it a like, subscribe, you know, all of these kind of things. But most importantly, I hope you have a nice day.